Hey everyone, welcome to the channel, and I'm here for an album review for you guys. Well, this is actually a re-review since I just reviewed this album last year, and the reason I want to do a review and talk about this album again is because, well, I've actually been wanting to do it for a little while now anyway. So since we just reached the 1 year anniversary of this album, I figured, hey, why not talk about it again, and just to see how well this album holds up. And the album that I will be re-reviewing in this video is Red with their album Declaration. And, you know, I typically don't do these type of anniversary reviews, but Red is a band that does mean a lot to me since they were one of the first bands that I ever gotten into. I got into them shortly after I got into Breaking Benjamin. But yeah, Red was among the first 5 bands that I've ever gotten into. I do know that. So yeah, whenever this album was coming out, I will be honest, I do remember being a little bit worried for the album because, well, they've already spoiled half the album before the album even got released, and they've even made the release date earlier. I believe this was actually supposed to come out April 10th or something like that, and it ended up coming out April 3rd, 2020. So yeah, that's something that I was like, okay, why are they doing that? But yeah, overall, I did have some concerns with the album. Not to mention, the songs themselves didn't really do a whole lot for me. It's not that they were bad, but it's just more of the same for Red. And that's my main complaint with the songs, you know, the singles that they've came out with. And whenever this album was first coming out last year, I remember thinking, yeah, it's probably going to be good for, you know, about a month or two, and then after that, we'll forget about it, and the album just will lack replay value. And here we are in 2021, a year later, and it's safe to say that my assumptions were correct. This album, it doesn't hold up very well. I mean, I will go ahead and say that. Now, I still would call it a good album, yes, but I don't think it's one of their best. I know that there's some people and some friends of mine even that have even stated that this is their best album since Innocence and Instinct, which I personally don't understand where they're coming from with that. I mean, I guess you could make the argument that this is an Of Beauty and Rage Part 2, but this album is nowhere near as good as Of Beauty and Rage in my opinion. I mean, to me, this album kind of sounds like it could be an Of Beauty and Rage B-Sides album or something. I mean, whether you want to admit it or not, this album is kind of lazily done, even though I still would consider it a good album, because everything that you want from Red is here. You know, it still sounds like a Red album, but like I said before, it just sounds like more of the same. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just doesn't really offer anything fresh or new, you know? And not to mention, there's no ballads on this album. I mean, this is one of the Red albums that don't feature any ballads, which is definitely disappointing. I mean, I feel like at this point in Red's career, they just wanted to put out an album just for the sake of putting out an album, just to make the fans happy or whatever. Because I believe I've heard somewhere where the band even stated that they didn't even want to come out with an album. You know, they just wanted to be a singles band or something. And I mean, with this album, you can tell where the intentions are. I mean, that is very clear for sure. So for those of you guys who claim this to be one of Red's best, I want you to keep all of that in mind, okay? Now, if you like this album, if you still enjoy this album today, that's fine. I mean, I'm not going to say that you shouldn't enjoy it. Like I said, I still would consider it a good album, but to say that it's one of their best, no, absolutely not. But this album, it's at least better than their album Gone, okay? I will say that. So this album did end up being a step in the right direction, but not by much. So let's go ahead and talk about the tracks. All For You is the opening track. It's a decent album opener. I don't really return to it that much. It's kind of straightforward. I mean, it is pretty catchy. I mean, Michael Barnes' vocal delivery is one of the main highlights of this song. Infidel, the second track, I don't think it's one of my favorites, but it is a good song. Nothing too complex, but it's not bad though. Cauterize, probably a favorite of mine on the album, if not my favorite on the album. I really like the song Cauterize. I wouldn't go as far to say that it's one of their best songs or anything. Well, it might be. I don't know. But I seriously doubt it. I mean, if it's not, then it's at least an honorable mention. But Cauterize, it's a pretty good track. I mean, I really like the heaviness and Michael Barnes' vocal delivery in this song and how eerie the verses sound. It's a really good song and definitely one of the highlights on the album. Definitely one of the best tracks on the album, too. Then we got The War We Made, which is one of the singles, and yeah, I mean, not a song that I think to return to very much. I mean, this is one of the more, I guess, radio-friendly, radio rock-friendly songs that are on the album. It's not a bad song. I personally wouldn't say it's a favorite of mine, but I still do like it, though. I think it's a pretty good track. Then we got The Evening Hate, which was the first single, and I think it's a pretty decent choice for the first single. I mean, I remember when this first came out as a single, I remember kind of being surprised by the heaviness. Like, okay, I see what they're doing here. This is nothing like their last album, Gone. You know, they're kind of going back to their roots, but then again, it is just more of the same, kind of just standard Red. But this song, it's pretty good, and I'll be honest, it's actually kind of grown on me a little bit. It's a pretty good track. Then we got Float, which is the heaviest track on the album, or arguably the heaviest track. Maybe even Red's heaviest songs, but of course that is up for debate. But Float, it's a good song. I will admit, it's a song that hasn't held up for me very well. I don't return to it that much. But even in saying that, I still think it's a good song. I mean, of course, Michael Barnes really delivering those intense screams. I mean, that's especially one of the main highlights of that song. And then we got The Victim, and I'll be honest with you guys, I really don't even remember this song much. I've only listened to it like once or twice, but what I do remember is it's just one of the more meh songs on the album. It's maybe my least favorite on the album. I don't know. Maybe I'll have to return to it more, maybe give it more chances or whatever, but it's definitely not one of the better songs on the album. Then we got Sever, which is another single, and this is another one of my favorites on the album. I mean, the melodies and Michael Barnes' vocals, I mean, it's all just fantastic in this song. I mean, it's easily one of the best songs on the album, and ever since it came out as a single, I've pretty much liked it. Now, I still don't exactly return to it a whole lot today, but it is one of the better songs on the album. And then we got Only Fights, which is probably another one of the best songs on the album. This is actually another favorite of mine, maybe. I don't know. If it's not a favorite, it's at least an honorable mention. It's a pretty good track. It's more experimental. This is one of the more experimental songs. I mean, it's not like Gone or Release the Panic experimental, but it's got some industrial elements to it. And I think it's not super complex or anything, but, you know, it offers something different, I think. So I think it is one of the better songs on the album. And then we got From the Ashes, the closing track. Now, whenever the track listing first got announced for this album last year, and when I saw that From the Ashes was going to be the closing track, because, well, From the Ashes was one of the singles, I just remember thinking, really? I mean, way to spoil the finale, you know. We've already heard the closing track to this album. And would I say that it works as a closing track in of itself? I guess. I mean, I think it's fine. It's suitable as a closing track. And I will admit, this is a song that I've always liked. I mean, I don't know if I'd say it's a favorite of mine, but I do like it, though. I think it's a great song. If it's not a favorite, then it's at least an honorable mention, kind of like Only Fight. But Declaration, I mean, it's a good album. I mean, it definitely is. It's a good album for what it is, but it just lacks replay value. I mean, I think the thing is this album is, like, really meant to enjoy if you're, you know, a hardcore Red fan, basically. I mean, now, Red, they're not a band that I really listen to as much these days. That is something I will admit. And maybe that has something to do with my replay value with this album and this album's staying power for me personally. Red is just not a band that I return to as much these days. I think the thing is I've just kind of oversaturated them back in the day, because back in the day I would listen to Red all the time. Like, they were, again, one of the first 5 bands that I've gotten into, and they were also one of the few bands at the time that I would listen to. So I wasn't really listening to much at this time whenever, you know, I was listening to Red very often. So I guess I'm just kind of sick of Red, I guess. Like, I've just, you know, listened to them a little too much, I guess. But yeah, Declaration, it is an improvement from Gone. And I do know that Red is actually back in the studio working on some new material. Now, could it be a new album? I don't know. It could be a new EP, or it could just be a single. I don't know what they're doing, but I will admit I am a little bit anxious on what they're going to do. Declaration, it's a good album, but it's not one of their best. I'll just say that. So as a score, I'll have to give Declaration by Red, nowadays, maybe an 8 out of 10. This album, it's good, but again, it's just not one of their strongest. So there you have it. That's my review. So let me know what you guys think. If you disagree with my opinion on this album, and this album holds up well for you, that's totally fine with me, but feel free to let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day, and take care.